Okay, kia ora. Tēnā koutou katoa. My name is Thomas McGrath, and I'm joining you from Right Global Headquarters in Wellington, New Zealand. It's lovely to see you all, even though I can't actually see you all. Thanks for joining us for this live Q&A hosted by Right Online. Our job today, and the title of this webinar, is help. So if you are here for some writing assistance, if writing is difficult or you just want to get a bit better, we are here to help you. And we're joined by two fantastic consultants today, Megan and Jacob, and I'll get them to introduce themselves in a second. But if you haven't heard about Right Online, go to rightonline.co.nz and you can sign up for a free trial to see if it works for you. We have a whole bunch of different content about all sorts of different things, pretty much anything that you can imagine writing related. So today, again, help, the most common writing difficulties and how to overcome them. We're joined by Megan Bennett, Jacob Lister. Megan, tell us a little bit about yourself and where are you joining us from?
Kia ora, I'm Megan. I'm joining today from Wellington, sunny Wellington, which is quite nice for a change. And just a little bit about myself. I am a trainer or plain language consultant here at Right, and I'm in the training team. I have been in the plain language field for, I think, about 9 or 10 years. I've done a few things. I've worked for ministries, I've worked for conservation businesses, I've worked for myself, and now I've been working for Right for a couple of years. So yeah, great to be here today.
Awesome. Kia ora, Megan. And kia ora, Nick. Didn't know if you knew you joined us.
Oh, sorry.
That's all right. And kia ora, Jacob. Tell us a little bit about yourself and where are you joining us from?
Kia ora. So, yeah, I'm Jacob. I'm from the shining capital of Taranaki, Hawera. And unfortunately, I couldn't join from Hawera. I'm in Wellington at the moment. Gosh, I suppose what's relevant about me. So I was a youth worker for a couple of years. So my day-to-day was helping people speak in ways that were healthy. So all about healthy communication. And now I found myself at Right doing a similar kind of thing, but for work-related communication.
Beauty. Awesome. Okay, so we've got some, we can cover a whole bunch of territory today. And the great thing about this webinar and this live Q&A is that you can contribute. If you have a question from wherever you are joining us, you can contribute a question and our wonderful consultants will give you the best help that they can possibly conceive of at that time. So if you do have a question, down the bottom of the Zoom actions bar, I guess you call it, is a Q&A function. Just type your question in there and we will bring it up and we can talk through the question as it comes up. So the first thing we're going to do, though, is one of my favorite things in these Q&As is to ask our consultants just right off the bat their top 3 tips on the topic. So Megan, we'll start with you. People have come here for just some general writing help. What are some of the things that you say as a trainer, the most common pieces of writing advice that you give? Top 3 tips.
Okay, yes, I do bang on relentlessly about 3 things in my workshops. Think about your reader, think about your purpose, and think about your outcome. So we obviously know plain language is very reader focused. So you want to really jump into your reader's shoes, see things from their angle. So find out, a lot about them. What are their attitudes to the topic that you're writing about? How busy are they? How much do they know? And delving into your reader is the best way to know what content to give them, in what order, etc. But don't forget about understanding your purpose and your outcome. So everyone thinks, yeah, I know why I'm writing, but it's quite interesting to see how many times in a workshop you really sort of probe into why someone is writing and it sort of starts to change. So just be clear on that. If you get your thinking clear on why you're writing, you can then make sure your purpose is quite clear in the document or email that you're writing. So I always say to use a good verb. A good verb will tell, or first of all, will set your thinking down a clear track, but also tell your reader why you're writing. So you might be writing to, I don't know, inform or recommend or suggest. So that makes things quite clear in your head and in the document. But I also, outcome is also very important too. So make sure you know what you want to happen after your document hits the reader. Yeah.
Beauty. Boy, we're going to get our money's worth today. Lovely. Thank you, Nathan. Jacob, what are your top 3 tips? What are the things that you just say over and over again to people if they want to get better at writing?
So if we're talking someone's writing ability overall over the course of their life and career, I would say the number one thing is just be open to receive feedback, because no one is a perfect writer. And you will always be able to get feedback from the people that you're writing to and how you can make your messages clearer for them. So just being open to change your style and your approach. Mm-hmm. And the other thing is probably just accept that there are going to be some mistakes and that your writing is never going to be perfect. And if you go into anything trying to achieve perfection, you're going to get in your own head and spiral out of control and never actually say the thing that you need to say. So clear language is really important, but also just have confidence that you're going to be able to say what you're trying to say, mm-hmm. And just improve over time.
Fantastic. Okay, let's stay on that topic, actually, Jacob, because and a question we get commonly, we've got a few questions to go into here, and just a reminder, if you are watching, you can submit a question to Megan or Jacob, and you can submit it at any time. So pop them in down the bottom through the Q&A function. Here's one we've got in advance, which is quite topical on what you've just said, Jacob. I'm always worried I'm going to make mistakes, so I spend ages on each sentence getting it right before moving on. How do I write faster without letting errors through? Because I think a lot of people are worried about the risk of sending a piece of writing out that's got some errors in it, or it's got a few things that are wrong with it. So how do you kind of reconcile those two things? People want to get it right, but they also don't want to, be checking every single sentence all the way through. What would your advice be on that one, Jacob?
So if we're talking sentences, usually people struggle around sentences because they're trying to fit too many ideas into one sentence. So a good sentence, ideally you want to keep to one idea. And if you find it difficult, it could be that the way that you're writing it on the page is confusing you, and you are trying to make quite a simple idea more and more and more complex because you're folding ideas in on themselves. So first of all, just try and keep sentences to one idea. And second of all, just accept that there will still probably be mistakes, but the more you write and the more you practice, the easier it gets over time.
Mm-hmm. Any thoughts on that one, Megan? Any other bits of advice on that topic?
I guess if you're finding that you're doing that write, edit thing, even at sentence sort of level, I've been there, then I would suggest, like Jacob said, don't go for perfection, but remember that you should have an editing stage in your writing process as well. So it's better just to write as freely as you can, even if you know that's not really how you want to say it, and then wait for that editing stage, get some fresh eyes, hopefully, and then jump in and see if you can just sort of shape things a little more. Yeah, things are always better when you give them some time and come back to them.
Yeah, and sometimes that can be most helpful, like you say, if you need to do it yourself, giving yourself some distance. But sometimes it can be helpful to have another pair of eyes on your document, when you get to that point. I sometimes find if I spend too long with something, I stop seeing my own errors. Yeah,
you're in that world and you just need to step out of it. Yeah.
Fantastic. Okay, we'll go to a viewer question now. Thank you, Sarah. Sarah Crosswell. Sarah's question is, do you have a recommended format or tips for writing reports? So reports can look lots of different ways, and obviously the purpose of a report is to give some information or some recommendations. Megan, what would you say to Sarah if she's looking for just some general purpose things that are going to help her write better reports?
Yeah, I probably, unless you have to use a template, I probably wouldn't be looking for an absolute template or format. It just depends on what you're writing, who you're writing it for. One thing that I'd really recommend getting right or really focusing on is a good executive summary. Yeah, I think including sort of, I guess, 4 things in that executive summary will really help your reader right at the start. So purpose, include that main question that your report is trying to answer. your answer to that main question, then what that answer means for your reader. Maybe that's a set of recommendations, or perhaps it's some next steps or a summary. And also don't forget a brief context to give the reader some background and help them understand why that report was necessary. That is kind of a snapshot of a wider report as well. So that might be helpful in terms of looking for a format. But structuring, if you are, for example, writing a report with recommendations, then you would want to make sure the recommendations were fairly close to the beginning of the report. That's probably some of the key things I'd mentioned there.
Yeah, lovely. Anything to add on that one, Jacob?
I would say whenever you can, prioritize the information that your readers want to know. And if you're not too sure what your readers want to know, then do what you can to find out. If you know they've got specific questions in mind that they want answered, using their answers to those questions as your headings is a really good way to have people quickly see what information they're trying to get out of your report. And if you can almost use that as your skeleton. So going from the answer to all of their questions could be the way that you make your outline before you start going into the body of all the rest of the report.
And so when you say headings, a lot of us are used to the type of headings where we might have introduction or key points or something. Do you mean those headings?
So my advice for headings is, if your heading only names your section, so introduction, recommendations, you have to read that section to find the key information. So ideally you want to take the most important thing you're trying to say and state that in your headings. So instead of just saying recommendations, you might say, we have 5 recommendations to do blah, blah, maybe.
Right, so you can definitely give a lot more information in a heading than just a single word.
Yes.
Awesome.
Yes. Never underestimate how useful headings can be.
Right, write that one down, everybody. Put that on a t-shirt and wear it around the office. Okay, right, let's go to another one here. And just to remember, folks, if you are watching and you've just joined us, you can submit a question and we will answer your question. Pop it in the Q&A and we'll give you a lovely response. Let's talk about the next one here. I tend to overwrite and then have to cut out heaps of my writing. Is that normal? What would you say, Jacob?
I would say it's normal. It's probably not always going to be the most effective approach. So I would say be really clear on what it is that you're trying to say and why you're trying to say it. Nail down your purpose before you start writing. And if you're tempted to include information that doesn't help achieve that purpose, it might not be relevant. The audience might not need to know it.
Mm-hmm. Any thoughts on that one, Megan? Someone who just tends to write too much, and then it sounds from what you were saying before that a bit of editing is good, but if you have to do too much editing, it can take ages.
Yeah. So to sort of, I guess, preempt that, planning, Jacob mentioned earlier reader questions. So before you even start writing, if you think about the topic and you've really obviously put some thought into your readers, think about what their questions might be about the topic and even about the document itself. What we do in workshops, just to do this very quickly, is to jot down questions on sticky notes. So, you're really just jumping into their shoes again and thinking, well, what would I want to know? So if you can jot those questions down, but then of course you will also have some main messages that you want to get across. So we do the same thing again. We pop some main messages on sticky notes, and then within sort of 3 or 4 minutes, you can end up with this great lot of relevant content, basically, that, as Jacob said, it supports the purpose of your document. So that's why it's quite crucial to nail that purpose. And then, that's your relevant content. And so when you use that to, you can pop that into a good structure for your readers that would, logically work for them, then you've got a bit of a plan and an outline to write to. So that goes quite a long way towards, overwriting, I guess, and getting too much content and then having to edit it out later. Yeah.
Great advice. Okay, just a little side question on this one. What about people who are advocates of the brain dump? You know, like you just need to think something through and you sit down and you sometimes get clarification by just writing it out in the brain dump. If I'm one of those people, what do I do, Megan?
I just do whatever works for you. I'm certainly not saying to only do it that way. Brain dump, if that's the way you roll, that's perfect. Work with that. But perhaps getting it all down, and then perhaps in each section, try and identify the main messages out of all of that thinking that's come out on paper. Even just a highlighter, just highlighting those bits, and then maybe coming up with from each section with one sort of short statement that becomes your main message. That would work well too. Yeah.
Nice. Any comments on the brain dump person, Jacob?
Yeah, I would almost recommend, if you're going to brain dump, make a separate, fresh document and start trying to put some structure to your brain dump somewhere separate. There's a writing exercise that we do in one of our workshops where it shows the difference between if you have a structure before you start writing it, you can make something really concise and organized. But if you try and form something out of your brain dump, usually you leave bits in there that aren't relevant, tangents, or you start to shuffle ideas in amongst other ideas. You can sometimes tell if someone's done the brain dump. So I would lean towards get your ideas somewhere. And then I would probably recommend you try and find order to them somewhere else, either with sticky notes or going through with the reader questions and things like that.
Awesome. Okay, great advice. Thank you. Okay, let's go to another viewer question. So this is from anonymous attendee. Love the name. I know you should put the most important information first, but sometimes I feel like I need to explain a lot at the beginning for the key information to make sense. Any advice? Jacob, should we start with you? What if someone is a bit of a storyteller and they want to really just like build this person up before they get to the main point?
So, anonymous person. I would say sometimes, especially if you're writing to lots of people, it is appropriate to give some backstory so that people understand the main thing that you're trying to say. I would caution that you always need to make that the first thing you say, because some people can just go straight to the recommendations and go, yeah, I know enough background context to know what's being talked about. And I've forgotten the rest of what I was going to say. So what do you reckon, Megan?
Well, that's pretty good. I go back to that purpose outcome thing as well, and just really I think purpose, knowing your reader, knowing your purpose and knowing your outcome, those three things can answer a lot of questions. So, go back to those and ask yourself, well, do these readers in particular need a lot of context or background first? Even perhaps try to not do that and then throw it in front of someone as a quick sort of user testing sesh, just see if they can, do they feel comfortable with getting recommendations, for example, before knowing, the full details. And you might be surprised at how it just does work. So yeah, I guess my answer to that is just go back to why am I writing? What's the outcome I want to achieve? And in particular, do these readers, would they benefit from that information first? Yeah.
Yep. I remembered what I was going to say, if that's all good.
Right, go for it.
So sometimes when you put a lot of time and effort into learning about a subject, you really want other people to know those things. And I think a really big part of writing something that is for your reader is knowing those lines between what is something that I like people knowing versus what do they actually need to know for this particular outcome to be achieved. And just be really strict with yourself on those differences. I mean, not including things because you put time to learn those things.
That's a very good bit of advice. And often because one of the kind of our poster statement would be consider your readers, write for your readers. And that naturally requires us to step outside of ourselves as the writer and really kind of let go of some of those structure habits that we're used to or particular types of language. You really have to put your ego to the side, don't you, for the sake of the person that's there as the reader. Okay, lovely advice. Thank you, both of you. Now, here's a good one. And we might not touch on this for too long, but we'll just do a little soiree in here. Another person, conveniently named anonymous attendee, has asked, can ChatGPT help me with my planning? Jacob, any thoughts?
The short answer is yes, it can help you with your planning. But like ChatGPT is a tool. I like to think of it as a calculator. If you don't know calculus without a calculator, having one doesn't really help you understand what it is that you're trying to achieve. So if you're going to use ChatGPT, you still need to know, what is my purpose? What do my readers need to know? Do I know enough about this topic? Because you still need to check that anything it gives you is accurate. So I would say just be cautious that it's a tool to help you, not to do writing for you, and always be super safe with what you choose to put into it, because like anything online, you don't know where it's going to end up or how it's going to be used. So don't give it personal information, and that's all I would have to say on that.
Right. Anything to add on that one, Megan?
No, I think that's quite good. I was just actually going to touch on that safety subject. Just be careful with what you put in there. Yeah.
Nice one. Okay. Wow, we've got the whole family of anonymous attendees today. Anonymous attendee also asks, what do I do if I don't know how to start? I think that is an incredibly widespread problem. What would you say? What are some things that people can do? They sit down, it might be blank page syndrome, or they just don't know how to begin. Megan, what would you say? What are some things that anonymous attendee can do?
Okay. Well, I told you at the start that I bang on relentlessly about, purpose, reader, and outcome, but I'm going to go there again. Just get your thinking, and don't worry about flash words or, writing words. Just say it out loud. Why you're writing. So I use a bit of a formula in our workshops. I'm writing to do something so that something happens. So that's your purpose and your outcome. So if you just start saying that out loud, and just really in everyday spoken language, that's likely good language to start off a good purpose statement. Don't sort of sit there and don't jump into your title straight away if that's an issue. Just get a good purpose statement down, that makes it quite clear why you are writing. So that's your thinking helping your writing just to get started. You want to know why you're writing and how the reader can use that information. So your thinking can turn into that purpose statement, which is a start.
Nice. So really returning back to the whole purpose of why you are writing. I mean, you want to include a clear purpose, ideally as close to the beginning, if not at the beginning of any document or email anyway. So that's why I'm saying the thinking can get you that starting point. Nice. Anything to add on that one, Jacob? Maybe a different angle to take if someone just doesn't know where to begin?
Yeah. So, and this might be an answer to the previous anonymous question. So it could be that you're struggling to start because you're not ready to start. You might not have enough information to actually start writing. In the same way that a lot of people get bogged down with the background context and how we got to this stage and all of the reasons for why they started doing the work that they're doing, instead of saying, what are you actually recommending based on all of that work? It could be that you haven't quite decided yet, and so you need to narrow down, what am I saying? And say you've got your outline where you've got all the questions that your readers want to know. Those questions that you're finding harder to answer than others, those are the things you need to do more research on.
Nice. Yeah, that's a good one. Sometimes if you do get stuck, if you haven't got something to put out, sometimes you need to put something in. Hey, do some reading or talk to people, figure some things out that way.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Okay, well, we still have a few minutes, folks. So if you've got those last questions, get them in down the bottom there in the Q&A function. Let's talk a little bit. A really common question that comes up is about academic writing. We get a lot of people that come through, and we've got a preloaded question here. I have an academic background. I know about plain language, but I find it hard to do. Any general tips for a scholar like me? What would you say, Megan?
Yeah, academic writing to plain language, it can be a bit of a flip. I'll start again with purpose, reader, and outcome. If you think about academic writing and the reason why you're writing, and your audience, you're writing to get a grade usually. You're writing for 1 or 2 readers, and the outcome is that you want to get a grade. Now, if we're going to a business writing situation where all of a sudden you're writing to possibly more than one reader, in fact sometimes quite a wide audience, you're writing for a different reason, and the outcomes are real. So stuff gets real, and you've got to really think about how busy all of your readers are at work. You only really have to think about yourself and how busy you are and how much you have to read, to think about, well, yeah, stuff needs to be written in plain language. So yeah, again, I just go back to the purpose, reader, outcome thing. Yeah, it's a good starting point anyway. Yeah.
Awesome. Anything to add on that one, Jacob?
I think it's probably fair to say that academic writing is its whole own genre, and business writing is a whole different genre with different conventions and rules. One of the main ones being it's still important to show you're working when you're doing business writing, but you just don't lead with that. You start with, okay, here is the thing that we need to do based on all the work that I've just done, and then go into detail about why the method that you used to get all that information was valid, instead of starting with, here is why all the work that I did was done really well, and then here is the result of that work. You just do it backwards. Also, it gets asked a lot in workshops, and I would say headings is another major difference. Academic writing doesn't make very effective use of headings, but when you're writing at work, you can state new information in a heading and just have it sit there and have people see what you're trying to say easily. You don't have to hide it.
Lovely. Okay, so you don't have to hide your academia. Just do something about it when you're writing genre. Lovely. Okay. Here's another one from our ever-growing family of anonymous attendees. Would you treat writing an email or a report or a memo, etc., so whatever the style, would you treat them all differently? Or is it all about purpose, reader, and outcome? Megan, I think you get to answer this one. What would you think differently about different forms, or does it really all come back to that central principle?
I think it does come back to that central principle, reader, purpose, outcome. And that's going to cover off what you're sort of asking anyway. So say you're just writing an email to your manager. Hopefully you know your manager, you've got a bit of info. So you'll know, if you're clear on the purpose and outcome, then those 3 things are going to help you choose the language, the tone, even the structure. Maybe your manager does like a bit of background info first. That you're only writing to them. So whereas if you're writing a briefing paper for a minister, you sort of instantly think, oh, that needs to be more formal. But really, same thing again. Look at your minister. If you've been lucky enough to get some information about your minister, and their styles, jump onto their social media and just see how they sort of, how they are as a person. That can help you. And if you know the purpose and outcome again, then all of that together will just guide you towards the right briefing paper for them. So yeah, I think it's not really do emails like this, do reports like this. It's all down to those 3 things every time. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, so that t-shirt is really gonna
I need it. Yeah. I need it, don't I?
Have any thoughts on approaching different forms of documents? Do people really need to treat them that differently?
No, I think those principles are pretty universal. And just really, I would also say on top of that, do whatever you need to make what you're trying to say clear for the readers you're writing to. Whatever that means for the particular thing you're doing.
Yep. Awesome. Okay, we've got time for one last question. And this is a slightly humorous one. What's the go with using all caps these days? I use them. This person says I used them for part of a title and was told off for yelling at my colleagues. When would you? Is it ever okay to use all caps?
Um,
Here
I
you go,
think that's the
Jacob.
impression that it always gives anyone, is that you're yelling at them. And it's frowned upon to yell at people in the workplace, so I probably wouldn't recommend it.
All right. Any other thoughts on that one, Megan? Is it ever okay?
Well, you do see it. I think sometimes it's okay. I mean, I'd only be talking about titles or titles of documents. Like sometimes it can work if you have a title and a subtitle in a document, maybe like a label sort of title, and then a subheading. I certainly would not be putting a subtitle. I'd be putting that in sentence case. Yeah.
So
yeah.
maybe some situations, but it'll be quite rare.
Yeah.
Perhaps
It does happen.
If you were getting an email to evacuate the building immediately,
Oh, yeah.
that would be okay.
Yeah, you wouldn't mind being shouted at then.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, everybody, thank you for joining us. That's all the time that we have. Megan, Jacob, any last words? Megan, any last things you want to say to the viewers?
Oh, probably purpose reader outcome.
Buy the t-shirt.
Yeah, buy the t-shirt.
And Jacob, any last things to say?
Yeah, I would say just do everything for the reader. Do the things that make it easy for the reader, not for the writer.
Yeah.
Lovely. Okay, well, if you've enjoyed this session, you can access all sorts of different content like this through our Write Online library. Just go to writeonline.co.nz. We've got short videos about specific things. We've got heaps of these Q&As. We've got all sorts of resources. Go and try it out and see if it's for you. And until next time, we will see you online. Goodbye, everybody, and thanks for joining us.